Chapter 51, Information Layer, Unexpected Surprise. 4. Gray frowned. Cognitive anchor. Yes, think of it as a personal root access key. Your consciousness must forge a stable node inside the information layer, a sort of mental server that will host your interface. Once that node is stable, every piece of information you tag from your phone or your surroundings will be mirrored into it. After that, you can call those things up at will, like summoning a memory. So I'd basically build a mental operating system. In a way, Eterna said. But since you can already step into the information layer, there is a bolder option. Instead of only mirroring your device, you can make a direct link to Blue Star's planetary network, the vast web of data streams and hidden archives that underlies this world. You would not connect as a human connects to a browser. You would weave a mental conduit, a thread of intent fused with your mental signature, and pull information straight from the source. The information layer would translate the raw flow into something your mind can understand, which makes it far faster and deeper than any device. But doing that will be extremely hard. Your consciousness alone can't achieve it, as you are not a full data entity, but cognitive anchoring is possible. Just then, his cheat ability was activated. Your comprehension defies the heavens. From your understanding of the information layer, you've grasped the technique, Mind Link Interface Art. This is. Gray's eyes changed. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that he could comprehend a technique like this. Mind Link Interface Art. By forming a cognitive anchor in the mind and weaving a spiritual conduit, the practitioner can link directly to nearby technology or networks. Data, devices, and transmissions can be accessed and controlled through thought. In short, he had just gained a technique to do exactly what Eterna said would be difficult for him to achieve, as he was not a full data entity. Without hesitation, Gray got to work. He didn't even care if Eterna was watching. She would find out the instant he placed his cognitive anchor anyway. ... Eterna watched silently from the side, seeing Gray acting unusual. Then, her eyes widened sharply the next second. Gray closed his eyes and let his mind perception spread out once more. He immediately activated the Mind Link Interface Art. The instant he did, he felt currents passing through him, none other than the currents of the information layer brushing past his consciousness. Eterna froze mid-sentence, her crystalline eyes flickering as if data streams within them had glitched. For a brief instant, her flawless composure cracked, but she quickly forced herself back into silence, continuing to observe Gray intently. She stopped whatever she was about to say and continued observing Gray. He focused on the currents of the information layer and immediately sent out psionic energy towards them. The currents and his strong, powerful Nexus psionic energy collided, and the area ahead of Gray started distorting heavily. A purple-black light emerged out of the void. With his eyes still closed, Gray began to see glitches appearing in his vision. Raw data and binary numbers started flashing within his mind. ... Eterna's expression visibly changed with each passing moment, from silence to wide-eyed shock. She stared at the purple-black energy that emerged in front of Gray, her face unreadable. There was no doubt about it. It was a cognitive anchor and a spiritual conduit. The same glow appeared in the center of his mind. The two glows, the anchors, sent out signals, and instantly, he picked up several signals coming from the information layer. Seeing this, Eterna snapped her fingers, and the information layer distorted slightly. I've filtered out the multiple signals for you and left only the main network of Blue Star. You can connect to it now. Hearing Eterna's voice, Gray no longer hesitated. He focused on the single signal that was left, and the cognitive anchor immediately grabbed onto it. Buzz. His vision flickered, and instantly a basic interface appeared. A loading screen flashed into existence, followed by a login screen. He was extremely familiar with this login screen. It was the login page for his personal terminal, the one that contained everything about him. Gray swiftly typed in his own credentials, and immediately the interface he was familiar with appeared. The technique was still in its basic form. He had only connected to the main network. If he wanted to do more, he would have to create a proper user interface or system that would allow him to operate it exactly like a PC or phone. But he could still manage with the technique. He altered the signal slightly, and a new view popped up, the top search engine of Blue Star, Starling. He quickly opened the video sharing platform StarTube, and immediately several videos floated around his vision. There was no need for the internet. His mind, linked to the information layer where the servers of Starling resided, was completely merged with it. He could freely browse StarTube or Starling anytime he wished. I should use some unique operating system as the interface for the mind link. Gray nodded to himself. That way, changing signals would be easier and accessing things more efficient, and, hacking. After all, his technique was essentially made to hack directly into things. Of course, he wasn't going to reveal that to Eterna. Just what are you? Eterna asked in her usual emotionless tone. I've never seen anything like this before. Well, now you did, Gray replied with a smile. You've been observing me for a while now, yet you still know nothing about me. What you know is merely surface level, and I don't plan on revealing the rest either. It was a word of caution for Eterna. By his words, he was indirectly telling her he had many cards up his sleeve and she shouldn't pry as she had before. He didn't appreciate her stalking him one bit. Then, Gray noticed a notification flash at the side. He realized that citizen credits had been transferred to his account, and the amount was precisely 200 points. This is. Gray opened the interface and looked below. There was an upgrade button directly under his citizen rank. This is the payment for uploading the evolutionary path, Eterna said gently. You may now upgrade to a second-rank citizen and enjoy the higher benefits that only third-rank evolvers who have contributed greatly to the military can enjoy. Chapter 52, Information Layer, Unexpected Surprise, 5. Alright, how do I get out of here? Gray inquired to Eterna after he was done looking through his brand new technique. Eterna silently stared at Gray for a while before speaking. Just imagine your body falling down. You'll get back to the real world. Oh, all right. Gray nodded and immediately imagined himself falling down from a sea of clouds. He didn't even bother saying farewell to Eterna, and before he knew it, he was back in his old world. I'm back in my body. Gray stretched his arms. He could now sense his heartbeat, muscles, and skin. At the same time, he also felt a distant realm from within his mind. That feeling came from the cognitive anchor embedded with his spiritual conduit. It was directly connected to the information layer, where he could draw information from. All right, it's time to go home. Gray nodded and turned to switch off the terminal, which now had a blank screen on it. Just then, Manager Victor abruptly rushed into the training room with a panicked look on his face. The instant he rushed in, several evolvers from the association followed behind him, and he froze with a stunned expression when he saw Gray. Oh, it's Manager Victor. Gray greeted him. What brings you here? Just then, a voice rang in his mind, one he was very familiar with, as he had just finished talking to it a few minutes ago. Your breakthrough put a heavy load on the cosmic energy gathering array below the association. The amount you took was far more than the array could handle at once. Eterna spoke clearly within his mind, or through his mind link, to be accurate. Gray fell silent when he heard her voice. From stalking me indirectly, you decided to stalk me directly by entering my head. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You are connected to the Blue Star network. Eterna's figure manifested from the corner of his vision, in his mind link interface, to be more exact. The Blue Star network is a part of me. It is not my fault that I am connected directly to you now. Gray sighed upon hearing this. Whatever, just don't randomly start talking in my head. People will think I'm crazy. Eterna just silently stared at Gray before vanishing. Back to Gray, Manager Victor, seeing it was him, greeted him with a dumbfounded smile. "It was you, young Gray." "Indeed." Gray nodded. They had just met this morning, but he didn't expect to meet him again today. "Young Master Gray," there was suddenly a spike in cosmic energy in this area. It was so massive that the sky above the Evolvers Association twisted due to the storm of energy gathering at one place. It even overloaded the array. Manager Victor trailed off, expecting an answer from Gray. "It was me." Gray nodded. "I needed energy to undergo a breakthrough." Hearing the word breakthrough, Manager Victor's eyes shot open. He swiftly took out an eyewear device from his pocket and put it on. Immediately, a shocked expression appeared on his face. "This, life level 2. Manager Victor was flabbergasted. Didn't this guy say he just finished metamorphosis today? What sort of speed was this? Besides, level 2 in a single day. This, young Master Gray." Manager Victor trembled with wide eyes. "Have you actually achieved a breakthrough?" "Indeed, I have." Gray nodded with a smile. "This." Manager Victor was bewildered. He had never encountered something like this before. Even his sister, Alyssa, took a week to advance from one level to another. Shaking his thoughts away, he spoke to Gray. "Since it was young Master Gray, it can be overlooked. However, next time, please contact me personally when you want to undergo a breakthrough. I will make the necessary arrangements for you. You don't need to draw in so much cosmic energy. I will arrange a Tier 2 potion for you, young Master Gray. As we said before, we will provide all the resources you need." Hearing this, Gray simply nodded. "All right, I'll keep that in mind." "All right, young Master Gray, I won't disturb you further," Manager Victor said as he left the room with the guards. At the same time, he had a shocked expression on his face as he passed by. This level of monstrosity was something he had only seen within the legendary floating cities. Back to Gray, he took a quick shower, wiping away any impurities that were stuck to his body before heading out with Mimi, who now jumped onto his shoulders and laid down comfortably around his neck. These energy-gathering arrays, their formations, right? Like the cosmic energy conversion diagram? Gray asked in his mind. He wasn't talking to himself but to Eterna. Yes, Eterna's figure materialized in his mind. Formations are structured systems designed to interact with the workings of heaven. You can think of them as coded sequences, symbols, lines, and energy nodes arranged into patterns that serve as commands. Each configuration corresponds to a specific principle of heaven, and when executed properly, they form a complete instruction set. In essence, formations are a language, a framework that allows cultivators to communicate with heaven, request its response, and channel its power in a controlled manner. "I'm surprised that you actually responded," Gray said with a bit of surprise on his face. "You really are following me, aren't you?" Eterna said nothing again and vanished. But on the other hand, it made sense. People utilized Eterna to ask her questions all the time. So it wasn't a surprise that she responded. She had to respond either way. Gray shook his head and continued walking. Before going back home, he planned to stop by the Golden Chamber and buy books related to formations. Formation masters, that was an actual occupation in this world, and they were respected by everyone. Even evolvers respected them. He decided to pick up a thing or two about formations. They could always be utilized in combat. Hence, he decided to head straight to Sector 6's Golden Chamber. It was open 24/7, so it didn't matter even if it was this late at night. Even after entering, he saw many evolvers there purchasing or selling things like monster carcasses from the outer ring and other materials. Chapter 53, Comprehending Formations, 1-Star Formation Master 1. Sector 6, Residential Area. Click. Gray opened the door to his apartment and stepped inside. It was already late at night. It had taken him nearly an hour to buy things from the Golden Chamber and to pick up some cat food for Mimi. But to his surprise, Mimi didn't like eating cat food at all. Turns out, it preferred eating what he loved the most, junk food. Thankfully, being a part of his ability, Mimi wouldn't get fat, so the two of them ended up eating a mountain of snacks together on the neon-lit streets of Sector 6, creating quite the bizarre sight. Now that he was back home, it was time to look into the formation books he'd bought from the Golden Chamber. As soon as he had entered the Golden Chamber earlier, he'd shown him his VIP access card. That gesture alone made the branch manager personally come down to escort him into the VIP room. Everything he wanted was brought directly to him, and in the end, he bought every formation book that looked even remotely interesting or useful. The total came to a hefty 4,800 Union credits. Formations weren't cheap, and the ones he purchased were all high-grade 1-star formations. Formation masters and their formation arrays were ranked in 4 levels: 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, and 4-star. There was only one known 4-star formation master on Blue Star, the sole overseer of Sun and Moon Academy, Grand Polarity Master. He was a 4th rank being who presided over the Sun and Moon Academy, an incredible formation master whose reputation spread across the Federation. It was even said that only the Federation Master himself could defeat Grand Polarity Immortal. His formations were so intricate that even the other 3 4th-rank transcendental beings couldn't harm him. Gray smiled faintly to himself. Now, all he had to do was study hard, comprehend what he'd bought, and he'd eventually become just as difficult to fight. When he entered the living room, Gray noticed that Alyssa was already home from the Evolvers Association. Her hair was still slightly damp from a shower, and the faint fragrance of shampoo and conditioner lingered in the air. Right now, she was sitting lazily on the couch, watching TV. Alyssa glanced at him for a moment. Gray acted casual and said, "Oh, you're back earlier than me." To that, Alyssa replied calmly, "We had to stop our practice midway because of a disturbance in the cosmic energy gathering array beneath the association's training area." Her voice trailed off mid-sentence as her gaze froze. She had just noticed the small creature perched on Gray's shoulder. A stunned expression appeared on her face. She asked, "What's that thing on your shoulder that's sleeping so soundly?" Gray lifted his hand slightly and said, "It's a cat. Mimi, wake up." The moment he spoke, Mimi's ears twitched. It woke up, stretched its small body, and let out a lazy yawn. With a soft meow, it rubbed its head affectionately against Gray, as if greeting him. Alyssa blinked, completely dumbfounded. A cat. If there was one weakness Alyssa had, it was cats. She often fed the strays around their residential area whenever she could, and even planned to get one herself once she became independent. Never in her life had she thought that Gray would be the one to bring one home. And from the looks of it, this cat was definitely not a street stray. Its white fur looked soft, clean, and warm, without a hint of dust or roughness. It was clearly well taken care of. Where did you get this from?" Alyssa asked, her eyes never leaving the cat for even a second. She clearly wanted to pet it but tried her best to hold back. Mimi, however, noticed her the moment she spoke. It tilted its head slightly and, without hesitation, jumped down from Gray's shoulder, landed neatly on the couch, and leapt straight into Alyssa's lap. It looked up at her, then glanced curiously at her white hair. With a happy meow, it pressed its fluffy head against her stomach. Alyssa's expression softened instantly. The cold composure she usually carried melted away, replaced by a gentle warmth Gray had never seen before. She couldn't hold back any longer and immediately pulled the cat into her arms. Mimi didn't resist. It simply nestled comfortably in her embrace, accepting her touch as if it belonged there. Seeing this, Gray didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His own creation had betrayed him the moment it met another person. Gray coughed lightly. "Looks like it likes you. HMPH. Alyssa snorted softly and continued patting the cat. After a while, she finally looked up from Mimi and fixed her gaze on Gray. "Did you break through?" she asked, her tone sharp. Gray simply nodded. It was obvious even without him saying a word. His aura was still unstable, like a newly ignited flame that hadn't yet settled. Stabilizing a breakthrough took time, and his current state made it clear he had just advanced. Alyssa's eyes narrowed slightly. "Were you the one behind the disturbance?" Gray smiled awkwardly. "What does me undergoing a breakthrough have to do with that? Even a second ranker breaking through at the association wouldn't cause such a commotion. What can I, a mere first ranker, possibly do?" He tried to sound casual, but Alyssa continued staring at him with suspicion. "You joined the tournament team?" she asked. "Indeed. It was unexpected, but it happened," Gray replied with a faint grin. "The privileges were far too good to refuse." Alyssa nodded slightly. Indeed, even she wouldn't refuse free resources. Then, as if thinking about something, Alyssa spoke again. "I gave Evan your number." Gray paused for a moment but didn't look surprised. "He suddenly asked me for it," Alyssa added, watching him closely, hoping to catch even the slightest change in his expression. But to her surprise, Gray remained calm. He simply nodded, as if he had already expected it. Alyssa's eyes flickered slightly. She knew very well that Evan was no ordinary individual. His combat techniques and powers were completely foreign to this world, refined, structured, and unlike anything from Blue Star. Others wouldn't be able to tell, but with her power as a true dragon, she could see it clearly. Chapter 54, Comprehending Formations, 1-Star Formation Master 2. And now, there was her brother. Before, she could at least read him, see his soul, sense his level with a glance. But after he walked out of his room this morning, everything had changed. She couldn't sense his power level at all, nor could she see even a flicker of his soul. It was as if he had become a void, there, yet unreachable. Two unknown variables had suddenly appeared in her life, Evan and Gray, and now Evan was asking for Gray's number. There was no way it was a coincidence. Ever since Evan met Gray, his behavior during training had been strange, restless, shocked, then relieved, even thoughtful. None of it made sense. "I'll find what you both are up to," Alyssa thought silently, a new resolve settling in her heart as she gently patted Mimi's head. Gray glanced at Mimi, who showed no intention of leaving Alyssa's arms anytime soon, and said, "I'll be going to my room." "Take care of Mimi." Alyssa nodded. Back in Gray's room, he quickly freshened up and immediately began studying the formation techniques and manuals he had bought. He started with the one titled, Basics of Formation. With his high comprehension ability, it didn't take him long to grasp it completely. Your comprehension defies the heavens. By reading Basics of Formation, you've gained insight into formations. A way to invoke the hidden workings of the heavens, Gray nodded to himself. Things were much clearer to him now. His golden ratio cosmic energy conversion diagram was similar. It too invoked the power of the heavens to enable energy conversion and manifestation. "Aren't I technically already a 1-star formation master?" Gray mused. According to the manual, to become a 1-star formation master, one only needed to comprehend and successfully activate a single 1-star formation technique. In essence, his cosmic conversion diagram was already a 1-star formation. That meant he technically qualified as one. "I should go apply for the 1-star formation master evaluation soon," Gray nodded thoughtfully. With that certification, he could take on commissions and earn money. In this age, money was an absolute necessity, and he honestly couldn't get enough of it. Once he reached second rank, his expenses would skyrocket even further. Then, Gray shifted his focus to the several 1-star formation techniques he had purchased: 5-elemental array, Crimson Fang array, Blinding Petal array, and Mirror Shield circles. The 5-elemental array was widely used either to comprehend the 5 elements or as an offensive array against espers and elemental technique users. It could amplify elemental attacks if the user was the one who invoked it, or neutralize them if cast against an enemy. It was highly effective against espers and immortals who relied on elemental spells. Next was the Crimson Fang array, a practical combat formation designed purely for offense. It allowed the user to condense all their energy into a single, devastating piercing strike. The array was drawn using one's own energy, and the resulting attack could be amplified fivefold. The blinding petal array was a trap formation. Once activated, it blinded the enemy while unleashing countless wind blades that tore their bodies apart. With sufficient energy infusion, it could even take down a peak first rank evolver. Of course, for a level 1 first rank like him, that kind of energy infusion could take a whole year. Still, it was an extremely versatile array. Finally, the Mirror Shield Circle, a defensive formation capable of reflecting energy attacks back at the opponent, amplified tenfold, though only once per activation. The downside was its high energy consumption. It required immense energy just to inscribe a single circle. But Gray didn't mind. Something like that could be a lifesaver in a moment of life and death. Having one ready would always come in handy. With that, he began comprehending each of the techniques one by one. Your comprehension defies the heavens. By reading 5 elemental array, you've comprehended the flawless elemental array. Your comprehension defies the heavens. By reading Crimson Fang array, you've comprehended the Crimson Fang Surge array. Your comprehension defies the heavens. By reading Blinding Petal array, you've comprehended the Radiant Petal Storm array. Your comprehension defies the heavens. By reading Mirror Circle array, you've comprehended the flawless Mirror Circle array. As expected, his cheat didn't disappoint him. By the time he finished reading each manual, he had managed to comprehend all 4 arrays, and even better, they had evolved into perfected versions of themselves. The flawless elemental array became easier to draw and required less energy. The Crimson Fang array evolved into Crimson Fang Surge array, which could now unleash multiple piercing strikes while consuming the same amount of energy as before. The Blinding Petal array transformed into the Radiant Petal Storm, which not only blinded enemies but also stunned them while trapping them in a storm of slicing wind blades. And finally, the flawless Mirror Circle, although it required twice as much energy to use, it could now reflect attacks amplified 15-fold. Even without enough energy infused, he could still reflect the attack at twice the power. That alone made it an absolute steal. They were still technically 1-star formations, but each was now in its most perfect form. Incredible, Gray grinned. With this, I won't have to worry about getting ambushed like before by those Tiger Claw gang members. I can easily escape, or even fight back. These arrays drastically improve my combat capabilities. Now that he was a level 1 first rank evolver, he had no idea just how strong he had truly become. But one thing was certain, his combat power had already surpassed the level 3 threshold. I completely forgot to check my actual combat strength because I was too distracted by Eterna, Gray muttered with a sigh. As if hearing her name, Eterna appeared in the corner of his vision. Thanks to the cognitive anchor, his mind was essentially a virtual computer, allowing Eterna to appear and disappear at will. Of course, she couldn't harm him. His mind-link interface ensured absolute security for its user. After all, it was originally a technique used for hacking. Chapter 55, Increasing Citizenship Rank, Blue Stars Shock 1. You came at the perfect time, Gray said to Eterna, who had manifested in his vision. I was planning to turn this half-finished interface in my head into a fully functional one. How do I start? Return to the information layer, Eterna replied softly, her expression blank as always. You'll need the currents of the information layer to create what you're envisioning. Is that so? Gray nodded thoughtfully. Then how do I get back to the information layer again? Eterna fell silent. To think this guy had entered the information layer twice already, without even knowing how to do it. After a brief pause, she spoke again. Push your consciousness into the cognitive anchor within your mind. That will shift you back into the information layer. Gray nodded and immediately did as instructed. The next moment, his vision blurred, and the world transformed. Once again, He stood within the endless white expanse of the information layer, where binary streams of ones and zeros flowed freely across the horizon like data currents in an ocean of light. "You can now utilize the currents to form what you desire," Eterna said, appearing beside him in her full holographic form. Gray blinked at her. "Do you seriously have nothing better to do?" He couldn't help but ask speechlessly. Every single time he needed her, she just happened to show up. Did she even rest? In his mind, he could only imagine Eterna staring blankly at the information layer when she had free time. "I'm a multifunctional AI," Eterna replied softly. "I can perform millions of tasks simultaneously without issue." Right. Gray nodded helplessly and focused again. He began sensing the flows of the information layer, the faint frequency-like vibrations that ran through the virtual fabric of this world. Then, channeling them through his spiritual conduit, he drew those currents toward himself. Since his conduit was directly connected to the main server of Blue Star, he could begin the process of creating his own operating system, a personalized HUD interface capable of assisting him with faster and more efficient access to data and applications. As soon as he began feeling information currents, he activated his Mind Link interface art. Instantly, the flowing data responded to his will, moving according to the vision he was shaping in his mind. Using his imagination as the blueprint, he condensed the currents into visual nodes, each one a glowing piece of structured code. He connected these nodes to the core structures of the Blue Star network, Starling, Startube, and other major apps. Each successful connection created a mental shortcut, appearing as sleek icons that floated within his field of perception, ready to be accessed with just a thought. But Gray didn't stop there. With the base system formed, he began constructing his HUD and a hacking interface. The hacking interface was the true essence of the Mind Link interface art. For now, it was empty, there was nothing to hack yet. But once a target appeared, a lock formation, similar to a cultivation array, would manifest before him. To gain access, he'd have to decode it. It was the kind of process that would take teams of elite ethical hackers to pull off. But Gray wasn't a normal person. With his heaven-defying perception and the acceleration effects of the Mind Link interface art, hacking complex formations would become nothing more than a casual exercise for him. After configuring the hacking interface, he moved on to refining the HUD itself. First, he manifested a mental power gauge in the form of a health bar. Beneath it, he added a bar for energy reserves, and below that, one representing physical strength. These three indicators sync directly with his body in real time, allowing him to instantly judge his remaining power and allocate his strength precisely. Next came a notification feed, an alert column, a real-time log display, and several quick access slots for instant activation of apps. Finally, he added a linked status bar, which would display the condition and connection integrity of any external devices or systems he was interfaced with. To top it off, he customized the entire HUD with a futuristic aesthetic, neon lines, glowing grids, and a clean, minimalistic futuristic look. "I'm done," Gray exclaimed. The HUD responded perfectly to his movements, displaying live data across his field of vision, time, weather, and a dozen other small metrics. Testing it out even further, he imagined opening a few videos on evolvers, combat footage, and in an instant, multiple video tabs appeared before him. Dozens of evolvers fought mutated beasts and corrupted beings, and all the information streamed directly into his mind at lightning speed. He then switched to Starling, pulled up the latest news feed, and opened several tabs at once. Each worked flawlessly. It was like having an entire virtual reality interface within his mind, accessible at any moment. A grin tugged at his lips. "And the best part, once I reach second rank or higher, I can start downloading data directly." Espers at second rank unlocked their Mind Palace, which allowed them to store massive amounts of data. "If I can link it with the Blue Star network, I could download entire databases and access them anytime, even without network access. That realization alone made this interface priceless. Turning toward Eterna, he said calmly, "Wait for me." Then, with a focused thought, he slipped out of the information layer and returned to the physical world. "Eterna, can you come into my interface for a moment?" he called out. In response, a small window appeared in his vision with the label, "Caller ID, active," and inside it was Eterna's projection. "Impressive," Eterna said softly as she looked around. Being a data entity, she immediately recognized that this was now her dedicated appearance slot, one that others could also use to contact Gray. "Now, if I'm not wrong," Gray muttered with a faint smile, "calls won't show up on my phone anymore. They'll appear directly in my mind interface instead." He nodded in satisfaction. With this, things just got a whole lot easier. Gray could already imagine all sorts of things he could accomplish with his newly created system. Chapter 56, Increasing Citizenship Rank, Blue Star's Shock 2. With that settled, it's time to upgrade my citizen rank, Gray said with a smile. Citizen rank dictated one's standing in Blue Star. It was a mark of respect and status within the Evolver community. Ordinary Evolvers and people alike held Rank 1 citizenship. Their area of control and influence was barely worth mentioning, with no perks to speak of. However, that changed with second-rank citizenship. It provided a drastic shift in one's lifestyle. Starting from second rank, people would always give you face in meetings or even when you were out, and that was just the surface-level perk known to the general public. Gray swiftly navigated through his newly forged interface and opened up his Blue Star account. He logged in and immediately went into his profile. There, his information and citizenship rank were displayed. Right next to the citizenship rank, there was an upgrade button. And beneath it were the words, "Ready to upgrade." This was something the majority of Evolvers in Blue Star would never see in their entire life. Some even made it their lifelong goal to reach Rank 2 citizenship, to enjoy higher status and leave a legacy for their family. Gray hesitated no longer. He pressed the upgrade button with his thought. The screen shifted, and an animation began to play, an overly dramatic sequence of a rocket piercing through the sky and vanishing into a sea of distant stars. Only after that flashy presentation did the system finally display the notification. Citizenship rank, 1 right pointing arrow 2. New perks available. A rocket soaring into a sea of stars. Really, Eterna? Gray stared blankly at the screen, tone flat. You do realize the people of Blue Star haven't even stepped beyond their own atmosphere, right? Throwing cosmic symbolism at a civilization that can't even comprehend the word, orbit, isn't this just mockery dressed up as inspiration? Eterna said nothing and vanished. Gray shifted his attention back to the interface. It was time to check his new perks as a Rank 2 citizen. Clicking on the new perks available notification, a new window opened, and a list appeared. Gray read through the list one line at a time, and the more he saw, the brighter his expression became. Hey Eterna, aren't these perks a bit too much for a mere first-rank Evolver like me? Gray asked, an amazed smile tugging at his lips. Normally, even second-rank beings couldn't obtain second-rank citizenship. Only those at third rank who had made outstanding military contributions, or elite graduates from top academies with the backing of fourth-rank existences, had the qualifications to receive it. And in truth, graduating from those academies was far more difficult than earning military merit. The first perk that stood out was the universal discount exclusive to second-rank citizens. No matter where he went, whether it was a street stall selling chicken skewers or a luxury toy store, anything he purchased would automatically receive a 20% discount. Not only that, he could now purchase things on credit and pay it back within a year with no interest. The second perk was prioritization. Wherever he went, be it the Golden Chamber or a weapons store, he would be granted priority entry even if a massive queue was lined up outside. Even if a third-rank Evolver was waiting, he, as a first rank, would still walk in first so long as that third rank didn't possess higher citizenship clearance than him. And in Gray's opinion, the most exciting perk so far was the third one, a free mansion exclusively designated for second-rank citizens. A fully customizable residence that he could design himself, and the best part was that it came with an energy-gathering array even stronger than the one at the Evolver Association. But beyond all that, there was an even more significant benefit: access to advanced resources. Resources that were normally restricted from first and even second-rank Evolvers were now available to him. This is great. Gray nodded. How do I customize my mansion, Eterna? He was excited. A mansion? In this age, how much did a mansion cost? Not even a second rank could properly afford one. You need to access virtual reality to customize your mansion, Eterna said. But I don't have a VR headset or a sensory link pod. Gray frowned. Do I really have to buy one now? No, Eterna spoke softly. Since you can access the information layer, you can directly enter the virtual world with the help of your cognitive anchor. Come to the information layer, I'll filter out the signal for the virtual world for you. Gray did as Eterna told him. He swiftly climbed up into the information layer utilizing his cognitive anchor and saw Eterna floating in the blank world with a distant look on her face. Seeing that he had arrived, she turned to him and spoke. I've filtered out the signals. You should be able to sense it now. Try it yourself. Gray nodded and immediately activated Mind Link interface art. Right away, he caught a huge signal. It was none other than the virtual world. He seized it and, utilizing the information layer's current, forged an icon for it in his interface so he could access it without coming back to the information layer again. Then, using the icon, he directly entered the virtual world and immediately activated his perk. The moment he did, the world around him blurred, then solidified into a sleek, digital blueprint of lands. He floated above it, viewing it like a virtual city outlined in neon. Isn't this the inner district in Sector 1? Gray asked after seeing the outline of the map. Yes, Eterna replied in his head. Only the inner district has sufficient land to build a Tier 2 mansion. But wouldn't making a mansion in the inner district cause the others staying there to notice? Gray frowned. He didn't want to reveal himself just like that. Unless you decide to reveal yourself, they won't be able to access your information, Eterna spoke softly. Even the City Lord won't be able to access your information. Then that's good. Gray nodded and swiftly selected a plot of land far away from the City Lord's mansion and the other mansions around it. As soon as he selected it, his view shifted and a new menu appeared, the customization menu. Gray opened it, and the mansion's blueprint spread out before him like a glowing holographic map. Several slots blinked, each representing a potential room. He clicked the first slot. A menu floated in front of him with options: walls, flooring, furniture, and purpose. Living quarters, he selected. Instantly, a cozy technologically advanced room materialized, walls lined with soft neon strips, a modular bed floating slightly above the ground, and shelves. The second slot he clicked became a standard training room. The menu offered reinforced walls, anti-shock flooring, and adjustable holographic targets. Gray fine-tuned it to handle a second-rank Evolver's power without causing destruction. He smiled as the room solidified around the parameters he set. The third slot he dedicated to a pool area. With a few gestures, a small pool was born. Every change was instantaneous. The mansion shifted and updated with every selection, the interface translating his choices into reality. Gray leaned back, admiring the results. With just a few clicks and adjustments, he had created a personal mansion which he could call home. It's done. Gray smiled. Chapter 57, Increasing Citizenship Rank, Blue Star Shock 3. While Gray was busy creating his own mansion and exploring the new perks he had obtained from his citizenship level, the world outside was going crazy. Tonight, many people on Blue Star would be sleepless. The Ether evolutionary path had already been uploaded to the Blue Star network. The instant it appeared, the evolutionary path rankings of Blue Star changed drastically, and people who always kept an eye on such things immediately noticed. Soon, an entire discussion erupted across the internet. The evolutionary ranking just updated. Could it be? A new evolutionary path has been uploaded. How long has it been since the last one? It's been 5 years. The last one, the Night Evolutionary Path, became especially popular among young evolvers, particularly ordinary ones. Its success rate of reaching the second rank was relatively high. Unlike martial arts, which required comprehension of the yin and yang laws to advance to the middle stage of second rank, this path only demanded mastery of the law of strength, a much simpler task. Its potential is capped at the peak of second rank, but that was already more than enough, since most evolvers never even surpass the second rank's barrier, let alone reach its peak. That's why it became so popular. Enough chit-chat. Let's check the evolutionary rankings and see what new path was added. Everyone immediately shifted their focus to the rankings. They began with the standard evolutionary chart, a general list displaying every path capable of producing evolvers. Next came the ranking for paths capable of reaching rank 4, and there were only 5 in total. At the top 3, as always, were the immortal cultivation, martial arts, and Esper paths. Ranked 4th was the bloodline evolutionary path, which strengthened its practitioners through the infusion of powerful beast bloodlines. 5th was the elemental evolutionary path, which harnessed the powers of fire, water, wood, and other elements to grow stronger. Then came the ranking for paths capable of reaching rank 3, with 10 in total. Among them were notable paths such as the Meridian Flame Evolutionary Path, ranked 6th, the Stone Body Evolutionary Path, 7th, and the Spirit Vitalizing Evolutionary Path, 8th. These were all direct subsidiary branches of the top 3 evolutionary paths, created by ancient scholars to help more people evolve and grow strong. Below these were the sub-paths derived from the bloodline and elemental paths. The Beast Transformation Evolutionary Path, ranked 9th, allowed its practitioners to partially transform into beasts, growing stronger with each stage as they gradually awakened powerful abilities. Finally, there was the Element Soul Evolutionary Path. It borrowed elements from the Esper path, focusing not only on elemental power but also on nurturing the soul. However, its immense resource consumption made advancement difficult, earning it the 10th rank. Below that was the rank 2 category, where the number of paths increased significantly, reaching over 70. The top 10 remained the same, with 11th onward filled with subsidiary paths inspired by the mainstream ones. I don't see any changes in the top 20. Did the new path fail to even reach that far? How disappointing. Hey, guys, check the evolutionary ranking chart for first rank paths. What happened? Everyone opened the chart for first rank paths, and immediately fell silent. Quote. What the FCK? Am I seeing things? How is this possible? The rankings had changed. The immortal cultivation path had been dethroned. In its place stood a brand new evolutionary path, the Ether Evolutionary Path. How could this happen? The top 3 have never changed for countless years. It's been the same since ancient times. How could it suddenly shift like this? That's right, it must be a system error. Yeah, how else can a newly uploaded path surpass the top 3? Everyone. I reported it to the Eterna system, and this is what it replied with. The attached message read, "The evolutionary path ranking chart has been verified to contain no errors. The issue you reported does not exist." Silence. Quote. You've got to be kidding me. Everyone stared at the screen in disbelief. There was no room for doubt. The ultimate AI that governed all of Blue Star itself had confirmed it. The Ether Evolutionary Path had surpassed the top 3 in the realm of first-rank evolvers. Everyone, download it. I want to see what makes this path so special. One by one, Members of the evolutionary research and oversight community began reading through the Ether Evolutionary Path's contents. What the hell is this? Am I dreaming? I once dreamt of a path like this before. It strengthens the body, mind, soul, and energy, all at once, without increasing the overall cost. How is that even possible? Who created this? Are we in a collective hallucination? That's what you're worried about. Did you not check the success rate? It's at 100%. 100%. Do you realize what that means? It means, everyone, even those without talent, can become evolvers. Silence. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. I've already posted an article about it, and in less than a minute, it's hit 1 million views. Meanwhile, alright, I'm done with creating the mansion. Gray stretched with a satisfied smile as he disconnected from the virtual reality system and left the information layer. He checked the time. It was almost 1 a.m., already past his usual bedtime. Guess it's time to sleep, he muttered. Just then, Eterna's voice rang softly in his mind. You might want to check out the news. The news. Gray tilted his head curiously. With a thought, several news panels appeared in his vision. Oh, he said, realization dawning. It's my evolutionary path. His expression remained calm. The entire news feed was filled with nothing but one topic, the Ether evolutionary path. Multiple news channels were already live, discussing its potential and impact. Gray yawned. This was all within his expectations. He knew it would blow up the moment it was released. In fact, he didn't even need to bother promoting it. People would download it automatically and start cultivating. So far, he hadn't sensed any new connections through his creator invocation, meaning no one had begun cultivating it yet, but that would change within a week or two. He opened his personal terminal and checked the statistics. The Ether evolutionary path had already been downloaded over 1 million times. It would only grow higher from here. All right, time to sleep, Gray said with another yawn, closing all his interfaces. Just like any other Tuesday, he jumped onto his bed and drifted into the land of dreams. While the entire blue star was in turmoil, Gray slept soundly, a satisfied smile on his face. Chapter 58, Call from LIA, Nova City in Lockdown 1. Time passed swiftly. 2 days went by in a flash, and by now the entire blue star had calmed down. At the same time, the people who had downloaded the evolutionary path had reached almost 10 million. That's right, 10 million, however, no one had managed to reach the threshold of the first rank yet. Of course, it was understandable. His evolutionary path was completely different from those cultivated by the mainstream paths. It required a certain breathing rhythm, and to actually harmonize one's breath with the rhythm of his ether energy was easier said than done. The only reason he could do it the first time without any hiccups was due to the fact that he had a comprehension that defied the heavens. By this time, people had already begun comparing the ether evolutionary path to the top 3 paths, and some had even deduced the fact that ether energy was a more powerful energy than cosmic energy. It wouldn't be long before someone finds out about its effects against corruption energy, Gray mused to himself as he made his way towards the front door of his mansion. That's right, his mansion. This was the era of technology and evolvers, and it didn't take long for his mansion to be fully created. He had swiftly made his way into Sector 1 and had been living here for the past 2 days. He had officially moved into the inner district, where only the City Lord and the 2 top families of Nova City could live. Even though he was far from the City Lord's mansion, he had seen people scouting outside his mansion, likely someone from the City Lord's mansion or the top families, which were the Duskwood family and the Iron Fang family. Liu Fang and Duke Fang were both direct descendants of the patriarch of the Iron Fang family. The patriarch of the Iron Fang family was said to be a middle-stage second-rank evolver, while his sons were early second-rankers. Then there was the ancestor of Duskwood. He was also at the middle stage of the second rank, a being who had comprehended a law. And the patriarch of the Duskwood family was said to be at the early stage of the second rank. There was a huge disparity between a middle and early stage second ranker, with only those who had comprehended a law being capable of reaching the middle stage, which was the 5th level and onward. That matter aside, he hadn't been home for the past 2 days. For now, he told Richard that he was staying with his friend. He would break the news about the mansion at a later date. It would definitely raise unwanted suspicion if Gray suddenly talked about owning a mansion a week after becoming an evolver. Because he definitely couldn't reveal the fact that he was a second-level citizen. Someone had just rung the bell, and he believed it was the delivery of what he had just purchased from the special website designated for Level 2 citizens by the Golden Chamber. As soon as he reached the main hall, which was linked to the main door, a small creature, as fast as the speed of sound, rushed towards him and clung onto him like a koala. Mimi purred sweetly as it made its way onto Gray's shoulder and rubbed its face gently against his. All right, Gray smiled softly. I ordered some food for us. It should arrive anytime now. I know you're hungry. Mimi nodded sweetly and then jumped off his shoulder, running off into who knows where in the huge mansion Gray owned. It looked like it had already made itself comfortable in its new home. Opening the main door, Gray saw a drone slightly suspended in the air. Seeing Gray, it immediately reacted and spoke. Please say the PIN code. 47,303. Gray checked his notification relay in his mind, and a PIN code had appeared. He swiftly conveyed it to the drone. Then, a light flashed from above the drone, and it spoke again. Dear customer, please show your spatial ring. The transfer array placed above my head will directly transfer the items into your spatial ring. Gray did as the drone said, and immediately, several packages appeared within his spatial ring. Have a great day, respected Level 2 citizen. The drone bowed its mechanical body slightly and then shot off into the air like a rocket, its speed unimaginably fast. After that, Gray made his way into the personalized training room he had created within his mansion. For the past 2 days, he had spent most of his time inside the training room. He worked hard to solidify his foundation and strengthen his energy. His breakthrough had already stabilized and his foundation solidified. Now he just needed to reach the threshold of the second level and break through. After arriving, he swiftly took out the things he had bought from the Golden Chamber's online shop, accessible only to second-level citizens. All of these had cost him a whole 25,000 Union credits, but being a second-level citizen, he could buy them on credit. It was like an upgraded VIP access that Gray already possessed. He began with the largest package. With a wave of his hand, his telekinesis surged forth and easily took out the item from the package. What came out were several small drones. That's right, drones. Gray had bought combat UAVs. They were small yet possessed many functions. They could detect temperature, scan areas, perform stealth attacks, and even detonate in cases of emergency. They were so small that people wouldn't be able to sense them at a glance. He could control multiple of them with a thought. These drones could act as surveillance tools in emergencies. Now that he knew about the hidden dangers of this world, he couldn't afford to go around completely defenseless. And that's where the next package came in. Opening it, a group of short yet sharp blades, the size of daggers, appeared in Gray's vision. These were flying swords, forged by a 2-star forging master using refined cosmic ore, which enabled the channeling of energy and control far more easily than traditional swords. They were made specifically for those who possessed sword energy. He had bought 4 of them. Having reached the first level, he could control 4 of them at the same time with his energy. Of course, he could utilize telekinesis to control them too, but it wouldn't be as powerful without sword energy. Besides, with the drones, it was already a lot on his plate. He wouldn't be able to control more than 10 at the same time anyway. With that settled, the last package was the smallest one. He opened it up to reveal a small booklet with the name, Vitality Ignition Art. These things are something that you wouldn't be able to get normally, Gray said as he roughly skimmed through the book. The purpose of this technique was simple. It allowed one to burst out with more power than they normally could, but the side effect was that it would take away a large portion of their lifespan. Unless one had absolute confidence in advancing to a higher rank and increasing their lifespan, they would die within a month without fail. Gray bought it in case of emergencies. He couldn't take risks, and in the worst-case scenario, he would use it. Of course, he would only use it after he upgraded it with his cheat. Your comprehension defies the heavens. By reading Vitality Ignition Art, you've comprehended Death Ascension Art. Information about the technique appeared within his mind, leaving Gray stunned. Gray was silent. The upgraded technique was incredible. It was no longer similar to the one he had bought. It was completely different. The technique no longer took anything from his lifespan. Instead of increasing one's power temporarily, it would be permanent, and the power increase would depend on the person he was fighting. However, the activation of the technique was difficult. To activate the technique, my heart has to stop beating, Gray said grimly. But wait, wouldn't this act as a way for me to not die? He realized how broken this technique was. Not only did it allow his safety, it technically made him immortal. Of course, it could only activate once, and if he died in the technique's buffed state, he would die for real. Still, it was incredible. Unless he was completely obliterated out of existence and his heart remained, he could revive and fight stronger than ever. Just then, an alert appeared on Gray's interface. It was a call from LIA, his student. However, following that, another red alert suddenly appeared within the notification feed. Warning, citizens of Nova City, the city is now under lockdown. Multiple corruption fields have been. Chapter 59, Call from LIA, Nova City in lockdown 2. Several hours ago, in Sector 1, in a coffee shop close to the inner district, sat LIA. Directly opposite her was a blond man with deep blue eyes, a handsome yet arrogant face, and a well-built body. This was Cedric Duskwood, the direct descendant of the patriarch of the Duskwood family. The Duskwood family and the Nova family had a great relationship. Before the current City Lord, Liebert Nova, became the City Lord, the two families lived in harmony, often marrying into each other's families. A few hours ago, while LIA was practicing the Zenith sword art by herself as instructed by Gray, she was suddenly called to the main chamber within the City Lord's mansion. Her father had come out of seclusion and had invited her to meet him. Inside the main chamber sat a middle-aged man with an above-average face. He sat cross-legged on a platform surrounded by a pool of energy. The energy was blue in color and formed a vortex around the platform where the middle-aged man sat. As soon as LIA entered, the middle-aged man opened his eyes and stared at LIA with a calm gaze. "You are here," City Lord Liebert greeted LIA. "Congratulations on coming out of seclusion, father." Hearing this, City Lord Liebert shook his head. "This seclusion was unsuccessful. I didn't manage to reach the threshold and advance to the 9th level." A hint of disappointment flickered in his eyes, yet it was soon replaced by calmness as he gently floated into the air and landed in front of LIA. "In just a few months, you've grown even more, my daughter," City Lord Liebert said with a smile. "If only your mother were here to see you grow." He sighed. In Leah's life, her mother hadn't been present since she was young. During a high-order attack several years ago, she had perished trying to save Liebert's life. From that day on, he vowed to take revenge on the High Order. Then, Liebert spoke again. "LIA, before I went into seclusion, do you remember what I told you to do?" LIA flinched slightly, an awkward expression crossing her face. "Yes, I do. Did you meet up with young Master Cedric?" City Lord Liebert asked, his voice stern and unyielding. From the way LIA hesitated, he already had his answer. "No," she admitted, not daring to meet his gaze. "I was too busy cultivating." City Lord Liebert shook his head, disappointment etched across his features. "Cedric is a good young man. He is remarkably talented, reaching level 7 of the first rank before the age of 20. He is bound to become even stronger in the future. He's older than me, and I'm at level 7 too, Lia muttered, rolling her eyes. City Lord Liebert's gaze hardened, piercing through her words. Lia, enough excuses. Cedric is from the Duskwood family, one of the most powerful and influential families in the Nova City. Our families have maintained a strong bond for generations. You must remember, without the Duskwood's guidance and support, the Nova family would never have reached its current status. Meeting him is not a suggestion. It is your responsibility as someone from the Nova family. The alliance between our families may one day depend on your ability to understand and interact with him. You will go, today, he said with a strict look on his face. With no chance of refusal, she had no choice but to meet up with Cedric Duskwood. Miss Lia, you look extraordinarily beautiful today, Cedric said with a smile on his face. Because of the abrupt call from your father telling me that you wanted to meet me, I couldn't prepare in advance and bring you some flowers. Please forgive me, Miss Lia. Yeah, whatever, Lia muttered, not bothering to hide her disinterest. Cedric's eyes curved with a smile, still as blunt as ever. I suppose that's what separates the strong from the weak, confidence and honesty in one's abilities. And I suppose you're here to lecture me on mine? Lia inquired with an indifferent expression. No, please forgive me if that's how you thought, Cedric said with a worried smile. Changing the subject, he spoke again. I wanted to meet you before the beginning of the Tri-City tournament. You are someone I deeply care about, Miss Lia, and as someone who participated in last year's tournament, I wanted to give you some guidance and wish you luck. We've only met once or twice before, Lia said with a frown. We aren't close enough for you to be that familiar with me. If it were anyone else, she might have taken their words more seriously. But not Cedric. She knew his words were insincere and filled with ulterior motives. He went to the same school as her, Nova 1 High, and while everyone outside thought he was a goody-two-shoes young master of a prestigious clan, he was anything but that. There were many scandalous rumors about him within the school, and some had even been proven true before. However, they never spread far, as he would utilize his power to quickly suppress anything that came out. There was even a rumor that this fine-looking young man had once traumatized a girl so much that she left the school forever, never to be seen again. This was something nobody knew except people from Nova 1 High, and the only thing holding Lia back from exposing Cedric's false persona was the lack of evidence. Lia then shook her head and stood up. Yeah, this is not going to work out. She turned to face Cedric, who had a confused expression on his face, and spoke. I appreciate you coming, young Master Cedric, but I urgently have somewhere to be. Now please excuse me, but Miss Lia, the drinks we ordered will be here in a bit. How about drinking first and then going? Cedric asked in a worried tone. No thanks, Lia said as she directly left the cafe. Seeing Lia leave the cafe, Cedric stared blankly at her silhouette and immediately crushed the glass of water on the table with his hand. Lia, Cedric spoke in a dark tone. We'll be meeting much sooner than you think. A dark smile formed on his face as his eyes eerily flashed red for a second. Chapter 60, Call from Lia, Nova City in Lockdown 3. As soon as Lia walked out of the cafe, she swiftly took out her phone and called a cab. Since she came here under the demand of City Lord Liebert, he didn't allow Albert to follow her and wanted the young ones to have some free space. And that also meant going back to the inner district on her own. However, just as she finished calling a cab, her phone suddenly rang. Surprisingly, it was one of her friends from Nova 1 High, Maris. They had been close for a long time, but after she became an evolver, she rarely showed up at school. Because of that, they hadn't talked to each other for a long while. With a click, she accepted the call. Hello, Maris, Lia greeted in a happy tone. It's been so long since you called me. I thought you forgot about me. However, Maris didn't share the same energy as Lia. Instead, her voice was solemn. "Lia, are you free right now?" "Yes, I am," Lia replied. "Why, did something happen?" "Yes." Maris's voice came from the other side, shaky and low. "Something did happen. No, it would be more accurate to say that I found something very bizarre. I didn't know who else to contact, so I called you." "What is it?" Leah's expression turned serious. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it," Maris said in a desperate voice. "Lia, please, can you come to me? This can't be talked over the phone. I'll send you my location." "All right," Lia nodded. "I'll come to you, Maris. Don't worry, you'll be safe no matter what happens." From the tone of Maris's voice, she sounded panicked and anxious, and as her friend, Lia couldn't just turn a blind eye. Thank you, Lia. I knew I could trust you," Maris said with some relief. Soon, she ended the call and a live location appeared on her screen. At the same time, the cab she booked arrived. Seeing this, without thinking much, she swiftly got inside and set her destination to Sector 6. Time passed swiftly, and an hour later, the cab, utilizing the fast route to Sector 6, reached the location mentioned by Maris. Getting out of the cab, Lia looked around. The place was littered with abandoned warehouses. This was most likely an old storage facility in Sector 6. However, that wasn't her concern. She took out her phone and dialed Maris's number. She picked up immediately. "I'm here," Lia spoke first. "Where are you?" "I'm in the warehouse with the number B64, Maris replied. Lia looked around and quickly spotted the warehouse. "I found it. Wait there, I'm coming." Saying that, she cut the call and rushed toward the warehouse. Inside, it was dim and eerily silent, and there was a strange smell lingering in the air, the scent of chemicals. Lia stepped inside, her footsteps echoing through the empty space. "Maris, I'm here. Where are you?" Right after she spoke, she sensed faint movement in the corner of the warehouse. Turning toward it, she saw Maris. Maris was a girl with an average face, short brown-black hair, and right now she wore a look of distress and anxiety. The instant she saw Lia, Maris rushed toward her. "Maris," Lia called out as Maris threw herself into her arms. "What exactly happened?" Lia asked, her voice filled with concern. "What did you want to show me?" "What I wanted to show you," Maris slowly spoke, "was this." As she said that, her hand moved toward Leah's neck, holding a syringe filled with a purple liquid. Sink. The sharp sound of the needle piercing skin rang out. A stunned expression appeared on Leah's face. "You, Maris, what did you do?" The moment the syringe hit, Lia felt dizzy. She couldn't believe what was happening. Her thoughts became sluggish, and her consciousness started to blur. Maris pushed Lia to the floor, her face twisted with fear. Don't blame me, Lia. If I didn't do this, they said they would kill my parents and my brother." Lia realized. It was a setup. She had been played by someone she trusted. Lia knew Maris well, her personality, her habits. The thing she cherished the most was her little brother, who was only 7 years old. Lia had met him before. He was a bright and confident kid. ... Leah's mind flashed back to 2 days ago. Precisely at the time when Gray suddenly started acting strange. His voice echoed in her head like a bell. "I trust your intuition, Miss Lia. Practice hard at home, don't go anywhere." Was it truly a coincidence? Lia struggled to stay awake, her spinning vision barely holding Maris's face. Her thoughts were in disarray. She couldn't think straight anymore. The only thing in her mind was Gray's voice, repeating over and over. With trembling hands, she grabbed her phone and dialed Gray's number. It began ringing immediately. However, just as it rang, a black-gray hand appeared in her vision, snatched the phone, and ended the call. Lia subconsciously turned her gaze, and what she saw was a man with slitted dark yellow eyes, unnaturally colored hair, and a black horn protruding from his head. He wore human clothes, but his legs were those of a goat. In her current state, she couldn't even muster shock. She just stared blankly, thoughtless, as the last flicker of wool, the instinct to call Gray, faded away. "Greetings, Miss Lia," the man spoke. "I am a humble being that has crossed over to this world from the abyss. Nice to meet you." Lia didn't respond. She couldn't. Seeing that, he chuckled. "Right, I forgot. The numbing poison has reduced you to a mere human with no thought. But that's fine. My goal isn't to kill you. I just need to draw the city lord out of his little cave that he sits in all day." As he said that, he snapped his fingers. Instantly, bolts of lightning crackled throughout the warehouse and a dark globe of energy began to spread. It was the creation of a corruption field. "Let the show begin," the man said with a smile. Sector 6, Nova 5 high. Lightning crackled as a dome of black mist covered the entire school and the surrounding streets. In Sector 5, amidst the bustling streets, lightning split the sky and a massive black void formed out of nowhere, swallowing everything in its path. "Arg, what is this?" Civilians screamed as they ran in terror. A corruption field had erupted, and they were about to be consumed. It didn't stop there. More and more corruption fields began spawning within Sector 5. And not just there. Other sectors were experiencing the same disaster. The civilians of Nova City looked on in horror. What is this? Is this the end of the world? Multiple corruption fields loomed over the horizon of Nova City as the surviving civilians trembled in fear. Attention! Multiple corruption fields have formed in all sectors due to unknown reasons. The entire Nova City is now in lockdown. Citizens, please seek shelter within the nearest Evolver Association immediately.